Hey, so welcome back to yet another Merge Roundtable. We're slacking off here talking about how loud people are in the Mediterranean. And we're going to talk about not that topic. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things today. SBF going back to jail. What's in store for him over there? We're going to talk a little bit about social media topics. We got a few of those that we have on deck. And of course, we can't not talk about AI and SEC's ongoing war with the American public over investment decisions they can or cannot make. And you had a topic about PBMs.
Yeah, there's a little bit that, there's been a lot of news that's been coming about, especially here local in the Dallas area. Everyone knows who Mark Cuban is, and everybody in the world knows about Amazon. So I'd like to just take, a couple of minutes to kind of clarify and talk a little bit about what really happened, because it seems like the people that are getting the news is Amazon and Mark Cuban, and not like, what's really happening and why it matters.
Cool.
So, we can do that maybe at the end.
So, we'll do some of that. And so stay tuned. We'll be here.
The camera.
Hey, so you could just stare off into space or whatever, it doesn't matter. So I guess the top news, because we've been following SBF, it's still the biggest video on our channel is talking about Sam Bankman-Fried. He's going to jail. He's in jail now. Apparently he showed the New York Times some text messages of his girlfriend, or then ex-girlfriend, who is also a fellow co-conspirator on his case. And the judge says you're jury tampering. You're basically trying to influence the outcome of your trial by revealing privileged information. Go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
But is he still collecting $200?
Well, that was the topic a couple of weeks ago.
Someone is collecting $200 for.
Yeah, there still hasn't been a resolution on that particular conspiracy theory as to whether he was actually running a crypto scam under a fake name or not. But
the important thing is that the politicians got paid, so they can continue to do the great work.
But
it's very important that they got paid.
Yeah, he's getting on. I mean, he's not getting charged with that. Like that's off the table. Like,
why would he?
It definitely happened, but he's not going to pay for that. It was $200 million worth of ill-gotten gains that he used.
They really
to
flipped
influence elections.
No, it used to be the politician is one who stayed bought when bought. Now
they tell on each other.
Well, I mean, they're staying bought. I mean, they're still there, and they're still, saying things in favor of Sam Bankman-Fried, but they just can't really influence the judiciary very much.
That's crazy.
So. Yeah, he didn't buy enough federal judges was the problem. He should have invested in.
They're pretty cheap here in Texas.
I wouldn't know. Outside of my price range. So
I have to be very clean for the next 7 years now. Thanks for bringing me on, Mark.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Yeah, I think that what I find fascinating about that is that I think we all know that the justice system is supposed to be equal, or not equal, but fair, or well, maybe not fair. But like the more money that you have, you generally get away with a lot more. And I think we can all agree here that if it was anyone sitting at this table that had been accused and had done what he had done, I don't think we would have been able to go home with mom and dad with a little ankle monitor and be able to browse the web and influence and do stuff. So that's just another nail in the coffin of this politicized machine that we have. What really fascinates and frustrates me is that if you go back to the ABC specials, the three-ring circus of your the three branches of government that are supposed to do checks and balances on each other. I feel like they're not doing that anymore. I feel like they're failing, and I don't know what we can do about that. We obviously don't elect the judges, right? And Congress, we're not doing a good job electing them, and there's
Here's the real question: is it because we're of a certain age where our eyes are kind of stripped of our naivety, or because it's always been bad, man. It doesn't take long to go back. The teapot scandal, Woodrow Wilson, it's always been bad.
Look,
Are we just waking up to it now? Because at a certain point,
everything,
we're like, wait a minute.
everything's always been
Everything
bad.
they taught us in high
but
school is
everything
wrong.
has, without a doubt, always gotten physically better.
Middle
right?
school.
We all have, with the exception of the last 2 days, we all have great air conditioning, right? We've got lower energy costs than we've had in the past. We have this amazing machine that shows us cat videos that we can also get, food delivered. So these are things that, even as bad as the recession or the world might get based on what's going on in the economy, my contention is that, it's going to take a lot to be worse than it was even at the worst.
So specifically to we're talking about holistically the entire world. Yes, everything's better than it's ever been. But the war on drugs, starting with in the mid 70s, and the 1992 crime bill, starting with our dear president and President Clinton, our current president, President Clinton, that kind of pushed that thing through, has made the Department of Justice the most powerful agency in the United States and remove those checks and balances that we've always thought we've enjoyed in this country. Especially at the federal level, the feds do not lose. It's now there's an unequal application of justice. Perhaps white collar criminals enjoy more benefits in the legal system. But if you look at the population of the American prison population, it's exploded in the last 30, 40 years. Literally exploded. It's almost 10% of the population is a former felon. And I know that's really not.
Or of color.
Right. Well, it predominantly affects people from the lower classes, which tend to be disproportionately people of color. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the reason why people like me can get in and out of the system typically, and people like SBF can get in and out of the system relatively unscathed, is because we are given target letters and we're given freedoms with the courts to, be remanded to my parents' home or whatever the case is with SBF. Whereas most people who are involved with drug crimes or conspiracy crimes or things that are in that world are arrested immediately, sent to a detention center on the border where they might not even have a roof over their head, and given some free lawyer to help solve their problems, who is worth about what you pay for it. So things have gotten worse in the criminal justice system.
So let's get back to the SBF part. So what happens here? So obviously they remanded him. They took him to Rikers? They took him somewhere. He's somewhere.
It's what's California? Probably. I don't know if it was Rikers, but
because he's standing trial in New York. No, I thought it was New York. So I figured they remanded him.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is in New York, but I don't think it was Rikers. I remember seeing a different facility mentioned.
Are you going through your head thinking of the prisons you heard on TV?
No, it's just this conversation is very
that's Florida.
sensitive. There's a lot of things I honestly feel like I can't discuss on my end, just because of how we see the prison system. You know what I mean? So it's and I'm talking about people of color in regards to, of course, we're talking perspective, experience, and the things we fear for our children and stuff like that. But there's just a couple things I don't like to talk about, which is I don't like to talk about politics. I like to listen and observe, and kind of steer my way.
I like to be lighthearted until I stumble into a deeper conversation. I'm like,
that's what I'm saying. I'm just like, I don't want to go down this path.
I'm just trying to bring these guys up a little bit.
All right, so let's be happy. Let's talk about something else. We know he's a crook. Whatever. Okay. He's his girlfriend's flipping. The CFO's, everyone's flipping. Okay, he's done. Got it.
Hey, you want to make it lighthearted? Whenever SBF was first facing trial, I was in prison and I was across the hall from a guy named Trevor Cook, and Trevor Cook has serving the last 7 years of a 15-year sentence for some white collar stuff. And he and I collaborated on an issue of my newsletter to elaborate on what SBF can expect next as he enters the BOP. I can read a little excerpt here.
How is this lighthearted?
You'll get to. So what you may ask, what can Sam Bankman-Fried expect in prison? He can expect subpar burgers served every Wednesday without fail.
Oh,
He can
my
expect to be outfitted with a cheap plastic Timex watch and, of course, the dreaded plastic spork. Probably a lot of bologna sandwiches. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. He's vegan. There's going to be a lot of unmeltable cheese sandwiches in his future. No more fancy island wear for him. Now it's freshly pressed khaki jumpsuits. And for that lustrous mop of his, only the best shampoo that the Bureau of Prisons can shove inside a condiment packet. And most devastatingly, the
Shampoos in a condiment packet.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Like
Like
the
a
little
mustard
tube,
packet
yeah,
type thing.
the
Yeah.
little tube.
Yeah, that's how it works.
I had no clue.
Most devastatingly, the BOP commissary will not be accepting FTT tokens. Only USD can be redeemed here for his squeezed cheese and soy-based taco beans. And of course, as a treat, imitation crab meat around the holidays. In all seriousness, though, there are real concerns about the survivability of this situation for SBF. This is actually where it gets dark again. I don't know if we want to go here.
Wait. They get watches?
Yeah, I mean, you get a watch, but it's like, you got 3 to choose from. There's the prison, they call it the prison Rolex, but it's a Timex. It's one with like a white band on it, and then like the cheap one, which is like an old like Casio or a Timex or something. Yeah.
I want
So
the
like
one,
if the battery dies, do they
want the
replace
one that
the
has
Like
the-
I just think about
the
when you
swatch.
think prison, you think
the
time.
stretchy band. I want
They're coloring the
stretchy
band. Swatch.
Well, so
Slap watch. One of them.
you'll make a stretchy band out of if it's too uncomfortable for you, you can buy they have this knockers band underwear, and you just take the elastic out of that. You can make your own bands with anything if that.
You
Yeah.
get really
Okay.
creative in that space.
If you
I
got
feel
a
like when
lot
we're
of
under
time.
pressure, we become very brilliant.
We're humans.
We're
Well, what happened
brilliant.
during the pandemic? When you have
We
a lot
were
of time,
brilliant.
you get crafty because you got
Exactly.
nothing else to do.
But I mean, honestly, when I was younger, I'm an elderberry, but when I was younger, I was very creative because we didn't have our phones, and I had a pager. That's how old I am.
Yeah.
I was cool too. But yeah, we're brilliant.
Yeah, well, fun stuff. Anyway, Trevor Cook, author, you can look him up. Google Trevor Cook. There's a couple documentaries about him as well. So anyway, I promised him I would read that on the air because he gets a kick out of being mentioned on the show. Next on our list, let's talk about social media for a bit, especially
Yes.
before you have to roll off. So we've got a few social media stories. One, so we're working on a new mini doc. The one that we just finished like shooting and editing on is going to be rolling out soon. I'm not sure, Sohail, when we're actually going to be putting that out.
I would look for that next
You're
week.
muted. We're not.
You can't hear you, buddy.
Oh, well, they can hear me. I'd look for that next week.
Still can't hear you. But when we put that out, we'll be probably announcing it next week on the show. But the one we're working on a couple after this, and one that Jen is interested in doing is talking about basically what may be the death of the large scale global conversation platform, Facebook, Twitter, that size. And actually, as we've been talking about it for the last few weeks here, New Yorker put out a piece this week which says that we should expect, if not welcome, the death of the quote unquote global conversation. And it's kind of like a retrospective of the last month or so of stories of the takeover of X and the decline in usership that's been occurring over there. The meta response with threads and how that has basically collapsed in a short amount of time. And, I don't know. We've been talking about this for weeks, so I figured that might be something we could maybe talk a little bit about here. What your thoughts are? Do you believe? I mean, you and I have been in social media since the beginning of
When it's fun,
time. Yeah, back when it was fun,
when people were cool,
when the global conversation was like 100 people.
before the hoi polloi started showing up and talking about stuff.
So I specifically
We
was
only had 4 videos.
looking for your thoughts. Yeah, it was like we had a viral video a year,
Everybody knew every video that came out because there were not that many.
and we liked it better that way.
Yeah.
These elderberries.
So
Meanwhile, we're doing this. Thanks. Pointing it out. Just
Right.
saying.
Well, social was so good when we started because it was that first of all we called social, we called it new media. The birth of
That's
blogs,
right.
and people would write about things they were interested in, and you met these great folks. And it was that we all talked about how it's the change from the one to many to many to many conversation. And that worked until we realized how many voices out there probably shouldn't be. And we're just needing validation, and we're bored. And it just really we got overwhelmed. It was the tragedy of the commons that happened so fast. I'm not sure we need a global conversation. Maybe small groups. I mean, that's what I've started doing, is pushing back into smaller and smaller groups. We had not a fight about this, but argument about this when I launched that company. You were like, why don't you want to have leads and build an audience? I'm like, I don't want anybody calling me. I know everybody I need to call, which seems foolish, because have a big audience, you can do something with it. But I feel like it just sucks your energy away. And that's, I got rid of social years ago because of that. I didn't want them inside my head anymore.
Well, that's also like the stage of your career that you're at right now, right? Because when you first start, when you have something that is, whether it's disruptive technology or you're just starting out, you want all the leads you can, right? You want to ride that wave. But once you get to a certain establishment, once you get to a certain place in your career, it becomes less about trying to prospect for new business. Because, for me, for example, whether somebody has $1,000 or $1 million, it's still the same amount of work
Right.
for a different size client, right? Everybody still needs to fill out the account opening paperwork. Everyone still needs to get a portfolio review, but the amount of money that you're going to make off of that, it varies substantially based on, the size of the client you're working with. And when you're just starting out, you never know who's going to turn into what. They may be snowballing you, but as you have a more mature book or a more mature practice, the Lehman rule, even though it shouldn't be called that anymore, I guess, but the Lehman rule, the 80-20 rule, 20% of your clients account for 80% of your revenue and your income.
The Pareto principle.
Yeah.
So math blinded.
Yeah. So, in many cases, I think that's one part of it. But the other part of social media that I think is fascinating is, and I saw this really early on by a girl that I was dating at the time, and she was just addicted to like Twitter and Instagram, and she would show me the funniest stuff. And I was like, you should do this for a living. It's like, why don't you, why don't you, represent my clients and don't answer doctor questions, but like, hey, when are you guys open? What are you doing? How are you doing this? Like, look at some of the different things. And that did push. That was the new advertising, and it didn't cost as much as hiring an actual PR firm. It didn't, and people want to do this stuff. I can assure you that, you could get some major celebrity and they wouldn't be on this roundtable with us, but we want to do it because we find things that are relevant to us that we can all agree on, and it's fun, and it doesn't cost near the same amount as it would to get a Survivor man out there. Look, and just to further that point, not that it's on the same realm, but take a look at the baking shows that are on right now. Remember, it used to be there were celebrity chefs on every show, right? Bobby Flay. How much did it cost to have him on the Food Network for one episode?
Right.
But now you take a look at some of these other shows where they've got people like us that are actually cooking and either winning or losing.
Right.
And they're, for a whole season, they may make $25,000 and they're thrilled about it. Yeah. Great content.
It's so funny you guys bring that up, only because right now we're casting, right? So our entire process is reaching out to people that we can't really reach out to, and the amount of runaround that we have to do between LinkedIn to like even these platforms that give you private emails and directly to these A-listers or whatnot. But in turn, like we partnered with, I gave a proposal to this travel company that only deals with professional athletes. And I wanted them to turn around and be like, okay, we're going to be your go-to when you travel to Egypt. And when I asked them about their social media marketing, and they're like, oh, we're very specific. Now, they're dealing with athletes, A-listers, but they are very specific with who they even follow on that page. Or like, we actually go in once a month and filter out people we don't want to follow because it's not important to them. So it is whatever, it's set up really to make it work for you. And it's just or you go down a rabbit hole, as a lot of people do. So when we go back to the discussion of the kids, I'm like, why don't you use this in your power? Like, make it work for you. You like to be on TikTok? Well, do something with TikTok. Maybe learn something or follow the people that we go back to what is it for? How? But do you really think it'll die?
I think it's not profitable.
Never was.
It's
Profitable for who? Because
well,
I know influencers.
Oh yeah.
So the net worth of one influencer we looked up.
But if it's not if it's not profitable for Twitter or YouTube or TikTok to continue to exist, they will eventually stop to exist.
I mean, why is it? Why is it not set up where they can monetize off the individuals that are making so much money on social media?
Because fame is fleeting.
Well, it's what's deeper than that too. It's also, right, there's a reason why Bitcoin works and blockchain works and platforms don't. It's because you're trying to create a business model out of a utility and pay for a whole bunch of expensive people to work there and pay for a whole bunch of expensive executives to work there and also make it a good user experience. And it's not to say that, Bitcoin was easy to make work. It took, decades of research and development and tries and failures to make that sort of thing work, make a protocol or a platform self-sustaining. But it's also a platform specifically built for value and money, right? You're talking about something that for the large part, Twitter, there's no value in 99% of what's on the platform.
Right.
And yet it still has to exist.
Money, that's an anomaly. There's still a lot of money flashing around out there. You think that they'll be able to do that in 5 years or 10 years? Like, we haven't had something like that. So they're building, we're building an empire, just like athletes or child stars. What are they going to do when they can never get another job? And they're not famous like 80s TV stars famous. They were some just dude shooting hoops on TikTok, got 2 million, made a bunch of money, and then what? Because they're always going to be chasing that.
They're going to be chasing that, but the best part of it, a lot of them, and it's okay. Again, this goes back to the individuals we're trying to cast for the show.
Right.
There are influencers that are making a lot of money who know this might be temporary, right? So they are smart enough, like an athlete, a good smart athlete with a great business team. They're smart enough to take that money and go invest in a lot of different things, whether it's in real estate or they're starting their own business of course, yes, you're making money off of social media. The smart ones are going to understand that it's temporary. Let's use this for right now. I don't think many
people understand it's temporary because they're all bragging, I know the 17-year-old making too much. I know that. And they're not building up the networks that you have like in Hollywood where long-term.
You'd be surprised because ventures come at, not ventures, but like, for example, we're reaching out and be like, hey, why don't you become an investor in something? 1, 2, 3, we have this show and now you can. So they're getting opportunities that a professional athlete can get, or a CEO of a huge corporation can get, right? That's not really given to individuals that are making less, if that makes sense.
Maybe it's what I've been reading lately.
Because
I watched Billions last night on Netflix.
Is that better yet?
Is it
by
better?
the way?
Billions? That's just silly. I mean, it's
the
not
first,
a bad show.
The first, I think, 2 or 3 seasons I was totally enchanted with, because like it didn't matter whether or not you understood how the stock market worked, but like if you did understand, it was like a master's degree in how things can be done.
You're talking about
horribly.
The Rock one where he's the professional athlete. What does the stock market have?
I'm talking about Billions, the one that had Damian
Johnson.
Lewis.
Dwayne Johnson's a former professional athlete.
Okay, so
it's in Miami. There's a lot of cocaine.
Is
drugs.
That Billions or is
Wait,
that? I think it's Ballers.
Oh, Ballers.
Yeah, I'm so
talking about.
Yeah, I'm like, I can assure
I just
you
had in the
that
background
watching none of these shows.
Wait, Dwayne Johnson was a what now?
He was a former football star, turns into a financial money guy. But then I'm also reading Winning Through Intimidation. So when I hear some young person has a bunch of money, I start thinking of all the sharks exist in the world
that are going to take it away from them.
instantly. The idea of a 19 or 20 or 25-year-old, doesn't matter if you're a rich kid or if you're an athlete, you are going to lose everything because you don't understand the rules of the game.
I don't
you were never
agree
raised
to
to do
that.
it.
I think
but I've
there's a
seen it
lot.
over and over and over and over and over and over again, because you're not used to actually making that money. If you're not actually used to seeing it, you just think it's the
I don't
easiest thing
know
in the
if I
world.
agree. I don't know if I agree because
mean world.
a lot of these young influencers are learning how to be business people. In my
From
opinion,
who,
a lot
though?
of them.
I would say, okay, I would agree.
I
There's probably a larger than normal, or larger than a better percentage of them are doing what you're saying. But even in my career, I've seen people in blockchain that came into money, and like there's just these industries that exist, and a lot of them in LA specifically, these high priced consultants came in with you know who.
Mm-hmm.
They just came in with this, okay, $60,000 a month, and we'll help you solve all your problems and get your startup going. And then like they disappear month 2.5, but their billing department still hits you for that 60 grand a month, and then you're dead. You're dead in the water. You got no money left because they bleed you for all of it.
This goes back to having a good business team.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is these young individuals now can be approached by business people like they are A-listers, like a professional athlete. So what happens when you become a professional athlete? As soon as you get into the league, they set you up with a financial advisor, they set you up with potential investment opportunities, and if you're smart, you're going to have a good solid team around you, right? Preferably women, by the way.
Have that?
To answer your question,
Oh yeah, that's still gone.
Twitter's never going to take a percentage of those brand deals and those investment deals, because that's not how they're positioned.
I wouldn't say Twitter would, no.
Or YouTube or TikTok or Instagram. None of those platforms are in that position to take a upside in their success, and that therefore they'll never be profitable.
They're not set up to take an upside for their success.
So then what happens when they
change that or no?
No,
they can't, right?
How would they?
So they can't be like,
would you sign up for a service? Would you sign up for Instagram if they said, I'm going to take 10% of what you make?
Okay, no, what I'm asking is,
or 1%.
Can they set it up where if you're making this much amount of money on Instagram, we charge 1%? Can they do that now?
No. Would you sign up for YouTube if they say we're going to take 1% of your deals?
But it's like any other agency. It's like any other agency, right?
But they're not an agency.
That's what I'm saying. They're not an agency, but can they do that in the future?
I'm asking you, as an individual, would you ever sign up for any social media network if it took 1% of everything you made?
If I'm making a lot of revenue, it's like paying an agent. If I'm making revenue off of this platform,
but they're not giving you agency services. They're giving you an access to post.
And you're already running ads for them.
You are running ads for them.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, there's not going to be, there might be services out there but no one's ever going to be Instagram big or Twitter big or YouTube big.
So how can we encourage the younger generation right now?
I mean, I think the bigger question is, what are these people doing that are going to be influencers that's their livelihood or their potential livelihood in a world with federated media and no large social media giants? That's the question they need to be asking themselves. How do you position yourself for a world where the reach is as big as you can touch? What you can get your arms around, that's as big as your audience.
And that's the question we're going to be exploring next couple weeks. I was saying the doc we did will be released next week, and then keep an eye out for this conversation. I like the angle of the people, because the social networks are changing. What about the people along with them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wait till it finds out that how much of the advertising is fraudulent. Massive amount. You can't not come back to that, because that's fake money propping stuff up. That is fake money propping stuff. We have seen 20 years now of social media companies. There's so much nonsense out there. When you go talk to marketing and branding people, they don't know what they're doing. They're just saying, what's next? Oh, this guy has $2 million. You know what? Let's put him on a Bud Light can. What could go wrong? Oh, we get some points for being progressive too. There's no thought behind it. They're just chasing the next thing, because they can't chase television anymore because that's going down. Can't do billboards. There's no print. So they're desperate to spend that money. But as you start actually tracking what's going on, you're like, why am I spending all this money? Unilever once cut like $80 million of its ad budget, because it turns out they had 50,000 keywords, and like 99% of it was Unilever and Unilever.com. There was no reason to do any of the rest of the keywords. And why is someone looking up Unilever in the first place?
It's a lot of money in soap.
But there weren't people looking for soap. That was the issue when they really, because what happens is there's money spilling around because 0% interest has ruined us. Now that money's going away, it's chasing bigger and bigger returns. We've got lots of other problems. If these influencers were out buying up neighborhoods like BlackRock, I would believe you.
But there are some
buying,
but we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes.
We
Just
know what
because
they're
we're
doing.
I mean,
doing
Mr.
bottle
Beast
service.
bought a
Mr. Beast,
neighborhood
that's what I'm saying.
for his crew,
His
company's
entire
house
crew.
situation. You know.
But it was a real estate investment for him. Even though it's for them, it's his properties. So if he decides to kick somebody out, it's his property.
Great. So we're turning a bunch of kids into feudal lords.
Yeah, that's.
But this is the whole point of the show.
They don't even have the right.
The whole point of the show that we're casting is to teach people how to invest.
Oh, right.
That's whether they're influencers or whether they're they can learn from the A-listers, they can learn from the successful business individuals like Mr. Frank.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, that we're getting the cart before the horse. They really need to start focusing on the basics, which is really just understanding a balance sheet, understanding a budget before they do any of the rest of this. Because really, the game is rigged against you in every industry. There is a barrier to entry and a moat, and that barrier to entry is other people doing it? Do you have IP? Do you have like something that actually makes it really difficult for someone to do the same thing? We know that in podcasting, you have a camera and a microphone. You can do it from home.
Right.
Whether or not people watch you or not, that's a different story. But let's assume they do for a moment. Who becomes your agent and your manager? Well, it's all the hidden algorithms and all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes over at Google, serving the Play stores and the things like that. So really, you're not only capped on like how much you can make, right? Which is because every time, just like any sales organization I've ever worked for, any financial services company I've ever worked for, you start making decent money, someone's going to start telling you you're making too much money and just withholding and taking money away. And you may not even see it.
I'm going to put an end cap on this conversation because I want to get to your PBM thing before we close out because we're running short on time.
Sure.
But the end cap on this is you mentioned algorithms. And so TikTok gets a lot of guff for a lot of undeserved reasons in my opinion. One of the things that they are, undoubtedly doing is engaging in like dark UI UX practices where it's just a feedback algorithm is dopamine push this button, you get more whatever it is you like. Mm-hmm. And so this is Europe, right? So in Europe, they've allowed people to turn off the algorithm and think for themselves, as the Wired headline says. The interesting thing about this is TikTok algorithm is unique in so much is that it has allowed us to move away from the tyranny of momentum with an audience, which is both good and bad, right? TikTok forces you content based upon interests, and just because you've had a viral hit or a viral you gained 1 million subscribers is no guarantee. If you look at like somebody that's got 5 million subscribers on TikTok, look at their video view count. It'll be like 5,000, 200. Oh, they got a viral video here, with 7 million views. Right. Which is like on YouTube or the podcast paradigm, if you've got 1,000 subscribers, you're going to get 700 listens or 500 listens to your RSS feed. It's a different world. It's going to be interesting exploring this in the doc.
We're going to explore it, but that discovery engine model for UPage model, that experiment we've had and seeing it interact with the advertising and money financial model. Dina, we see all these successful people like flaunting their success, but it's seeming to be a bubble. And I think that's what Jim and Frank are saying.
But what I'm saying, like even just the last few months when we have been researching all of these people that we want to cast for the show, there's a lot that I've learned that they were doing as influencers that they're doing off the grid. They're and nobody knows, like a lot of people don't know about it, like because we don't have all that time to research everyone, right? But I was impressed by the startups that they invested in and the tech companies they were like. I was impressed by these young individuals who have such a huge influence, taking the time out to learn and do other things on
massive studies on this.
I was impressed.
Every time that you see that, It's because not just their parents, but their grandparents.
Of course.
So when you look at Bill Gates didn't just show up, Zuckerberg didn't just show up.
Of
So
course.
some of these influencers have rich family members around, which is why they have the opportunity
Yes.
to be an influencer in the first place. So what it is that that's family wealth doing the work. It's not influencers. And that's a danger. You tell a kid you can be an influencer and do well, but you don't have the infrastructure, your family, you don't have the habits, you don't have the long-term versus short-term memory. You're setting those kids up for failure because they're not going to make it.
Oh,
They've
no,
gotta earn
I'm
and
definitely
grow and
not
build people around them,
saying
and that's-
go make a living off of social media. What I'm saying is there's stuff out there that we can learn from, or we can use as example. But yes, you have to do your due diligence in learning your budget sheets, right? And that's why we need you on the show.
Can we pivot real quick before
Sure,
we lose
sure.
some time? So I just wanted to talk about, I know that a lot of people have seen it on CNBC and have heard it all throughout the news, and people are talking about CVS and what happened yesterday. And it is important because, I mean, if there's anything we all know, that we get older, and as we get older, we need drugs. And those drugs are expensive in many cases. And, you know, one of the things that happened yesterday is that Blue Shield of California, which is a large insurance company that used to bundle their programs. So what people don't realize is that, you know, most of these employee benefits aren't handled by like one company, just as we were talking about with social media. You know, you have one person that's handling this part of the business. You have one person handling this part. You've got one person handling this part. And then you've got the payer, and we'll say a payer is short for whether it's a municipality or a company or a business. It's like whoever's actually writing the check, right? Now, there's somebody in that organization that's actually responsible, effectively the coordinator for benefits or whatever, but they're acting in a fiduciary capacity, which means that, like, I know me personally doesn't know the first thing about blah in a company. So I rely upon the head of that division to handle the IT and the, cybersecurity issues that I might have, right? That's their job description. Right. And same thing for all of these municipalities and these different payers. And we know that it's such a complicated issue that they don't themselves understand, what it means and what some of these definitions and terms are, because in every industry, there are definitions that none of us understand, right? So you hire an employee benefit advisor or a broker to handle that for you. And the sad thing is they may not be the right qualified person. So what people are doing, like California, Blue Shield, basically unbundled their plan. And so they piecemealed it and they said, we're going to find a way. And they came up with a number, which I think is wrong. I don't think it's going to be this number, but it's going to be a substantial amount of savings. They basically have unbundled their pharmacy benefit administration so that they said, okay, we're leaving you CVS. You're not going to handle all our pharmacy benefits. We're going to leave you with specialty, which not too many people talk about in the actual thing. Specialty accounts for like 60% of pharmacy spend, and it's usually the expensive part. So are they really losing? Probably not so much. But the news that you really got was that Mark Cuban Cost Plus is going to be one of their partners, and Amazon is going to be another partner, right? Amazon's going to handle probably fulfillment and membership. And then you've got Mark Cuban's Cost Plus, who is going to become a vendor. They will provide the drugs that they manufacture and make and are able to negotiate, but they're not a true PBM either, right? Mm-hmm. They're the manufacturer. The person who's actually going to end up handling the adjudication of the claims is a company by the name of, one moment, please, Abarca. Abarca is a 20-year-old company. I have to keep doing real due diligence. I haven't gone through it, but it's a company that's been around for 20 years, adjudicating claims. They've got a good piece of software. They can parcel it out, and they're going to be able to fit those pieces together with Cuban and with Amazon and the companies that are going to be the payers, in this case, California. The problem is they didn't do anything different, right? They didn't do anything different. Abarca is still going to get paid for the transactions. Yeah. Mark Cuban's going to make the spread pricing. Amazon's going to get some cut for having those clients and having, pushed it out. The good news is that it is actually telling people that you can unbundle. You don't have to go with the big three. Here's the fun part about math is that, like, we know you can all make it up, right? So here are the numbers that get thrown around all throughout the world. It's either $600 billion a year that we spend in the United States for drugs, but it might be 700 billion. We're not sure. You hear that all the time.
It's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference, right? It's just a little difference. What is it? 600, 700, what's the point? And then you've also got, what percentage of that is pharmacy spend, right? It goes anywhere between 20% and higher or lower. So what the gentleman from California mentioned yesterday was that he thinks that they're going to save $500 million a year themselves, and that if everybody in the nation did it, that could be, $100 billion difference, right? Well, if you do the math, those numbers don't work out either. The good news is that, like, people are getting out there and realizing that there are different ways to work and different ways to do healthcare and different ways to make it affordable and better for people, and that they actually are starting to take it seriously. And especially with a recession coming and an early recession coming, you're going to see more and more people unbundle that. But the thing that I just wanted to be really, really clear about, especially for those people listening in Dallas, people that are the employee benefit advisors, people that are payers in municipalities, in health care and health insurance, that this is not the end game. This is just the beginning. We don't, a lot of this stuff doesn't even start happening until a little bit in 2024 and a bigger part in 2025. A lot can happen between 2024 and 2025, but I'm glad the news is out there that people are starting to think about it, because as you all know, I really think that budgeting and spending wasteful money on stuff isn't helping us as employees. So yeah, that's what I have on that for today.
On my next press release, 542 million. So it sounds more specific.
Right.
You start using those rounded numbers.
Yeah, start questioning them.
It's harder to go off the 542.
They're not decreasing over the years, like for the
like
with the transition of like health and like,
so you have to take all of these legacy systems, like a big payer that has 26,000 employees. You've got these records that are held in some database. There was vertical integration into all of the pharmacies. Like CVS used to just provide drugs, right? And then they bought these wellness centers, right? So they bought something to make their addressable market bigger. Then they actually bought other things, which is like their own pharmacy benefit management plan, which means that they actually get to focus on the formulary and which drugs are allowed to be in XYZ's plan. And how do you get chosen to be in XYZ's plan?
You find an influencer.
Yeah.
I'm done.
You advertise, but long short
You
stories.
market. You use social media and
so,
advertise.
yeah, there are so many different silos. There's so many different ways that if they say, yeah, we're going to give you this price, but there's a fee associated with that. So they're still going to make their money. The only way to fix that is to actually fix that, and it's being addressed. Congress is looking at it. Their stuff doesn't have any teeth, but people are starting to notice. Anyway, I just wanted to point out that, the move in CVS was probably a little overdone, because there's really nothing that can be done, and it's not like they're going to lose any money anytime really soon. But the real notice,
ditches. They made it clear, ditches. That was the front. Blue Shield ditches. And I'm like,
ditches. And I'm like, but did they really? They're actually keeping them. They're getting rid of part of it. They're keeping the high profit part of it.
So just so like it's because you kind of went fast through the whole thing. Who is getting the graft? Like, where is the waste? Where's the waste going? Whose pocket is it ending up into?
Well, I'll tell you who it's not ending up into. It's not ending back into the payer's pocket. So whenever you hire someone to handle these benefits for you, someone who's actually acting in a fiduciary capacity, which is to say that I'm negotiating with XYZ PBM to then say that I've got 26,000 employees, because we have so many, you should give us. And by the way, I have another 100 different clients with the same number of employees. We have a lot of employees. You need to give me a discount on the drugs that I'm doing. And they do. Pharma does that. It just doesn't make its way back to the payer. And since it doesn't make its way back to the payer, it doesn't make it to the employee. If it was fair and they actually got the full discount and the rebating model and the spread pricing went away, it would be less cost for drugs. And then you could take that and you could add that to some other employee benefit, whether it be a 401k match, which we all know we need, or it could be, it could go to somewhere else. It could go to some other employee benefit plan.
So I think that's your conference call starting.
Yep, we got started.
So we should probably wrap up this show.
Yeah. So let's wrap it.
I gotta get going. Soon.
Okay. All right. Well,
My
thanks.
team is waiting.
Thanks for joining us. Everybody who is waiting for the conference calls to start, like 3 minutes, 2 minutes, we'll be right there. All right. Everybody else, join us back here next week. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for watching The Merge. We've got a ton more stuff for you to watch on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere. Check us out.